Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description and every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2 in a non-spoilery way of Apple TV's Shrinking. So Shrinking is created by Jason Segel, Brett Goldstein, and Bill Lawrence. And if you're a big fan of comedy, even if you're not a big fan of comedy, all three of these names should resonate with you as people who, you know, if they're involved in the project, you're going to want to fuck with it and it's going to be funny. Jason Segel, I mean, what is there to say about the guy? This guy is like, anything comedic that he's done for the better part of the 2000s has been great. The guy's in everything. Everything he does is great. I don't know what else to say. He's hilarious, but I also think he's one of those guys that, like, if you don't like him or you don't get him, then you're not gonna like anything that he's in. Where, you know, I'm like that with Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell just does not work for me, so I don't like a lot of the stuff that he's in. But Jason Segel, I absolutely love. I think all his stuff is great. I think he is effortlessly hilarious. So, you know, having a show that's created, written by him, co-written by him, automatically I'm on board. Brett Goldstein, Bill Lawrence. That's what I want to talk about next. Bill Lawrence is also the creator of Ted Lasso. And if you are here watching this video and you've watched Shrinking, or even if you're thinking about watching Shrinking, if you have watched Ted Lasso and you like Ted Lasso, you're going to like this show. Lots of similarities here. So if you're a Ted Lasso fan, that's a name that's going to make your ears perk up. Wait, the guy behind Ted Lasso? He also did Scrubs and Cougar Town, I believe. If you're somebody who's a fan of any of those shows, your ears are going to perk up at hearing his name. And then lastly, Brett Goldstein. He's here, he's there, he's every fucking where. That is the actor that plays Roy Kent on Ted Lasso. So great minds working on this show. And like I said, it feels like Ted Lasso. One, it feels like Ted Lasso because it's fucking hilarious. Like, I mean, I was down here in my office watching this, and I mean, I'm like busting out, like, yell laughing at some parts that are so fucking funny. Like, it's a hilarious show. But just like Ted Lasso, what I think is going to make this show special is what it does with these characters. Again, putting these three-dimensional characters who are relatable and likable into these scenarios that we can relate to as well. Like not just the characters are relatable, but we can relate to their scenarios. I think Ted Lasso really thrives on that. Like, they did great work with Jamie's character and the shit with his dad. Anybody can relate to that, right? So you have a guy who's like a dick outwardly, but you understand, like, okay, this is a guy who's dealing with issues revolving around his dad and all this kind of shit. And the show did really great work with that. And I think this show is doing a lot of the same stuff where they're setting up these these characters are multi-layered, right? You don't just have, like, this is the character and this is what their job is and what they do and their place within this show. You have that, but then you have that added layer of this character is also dealing with this on the side. They're dealing with this other thing on the side. How is this gonna impact this other thing? And, like, I'm going to get into like a little bit more detail without getting spoilery about what I mean, but they do a great job with making it so that they have a good balance between like serious stuff where I feel like they will blatantly at some point jerk on your tear strings? That doesn't sound right. Heartstrings. The fuck is tear strings? They would jerk at your heartstrings, I'm sure, at some point, trying to get some tears up out of you. But yeah, they're not just going for that though. They're also giving you the high level comedy, and you get that balance where it's like, oh, that was funny as fuck, and now we're learning something important and serious about this character and who he is, and it's like, oh wow, that's really interesting, or that's really sad, or that's really whatever. It's going to generate an emotion out of you, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't really like, you're appreciative of this character's struggle or whatever it is, and that pulls you into the show, and it makes you feel like you're relating to these people. You're really engaged in what you're watching, and then you have that, but then you throw in, like I said, it's fucking hilarious. So it's like really great balance between comedy and I think doing really great character development and relationship work between these characters. And you're gonna have to do relationship work because pretty much every main character on this show is a therapist. Jason Segel stars as Jimmy. He's a therapist, but he's also a recent widower. So like I said, complexity here, right? He's a recent widower, and he's been struggling, obviously, with the death of his wife, but then also just with being a single father, like having to raise his daughter on his own. So that's something that he's dealing with just on the surface. Like, that's the surface level shit, right? But then he also has a daughter named Alice, and I like the girl who plays Alice. I think she's doing pretty well in this role. I don't know the actress offhand, but I think she's doing great too. I love all the characters on this show, which is really rare, but I find all of these characters to be really likable. But I'll get more in depth about that in a moment. But obviously the daughter Alice is struggling with the death of her mother as well. But then Jimmy, he's such a wreck dealing with being a single father, dealing with the death of his wife, not handling it well despite being a therapist. Again, layering this character, right? He's a therapist, but he's kind of like that therapist that can't really take his own advice. Like if somebody else was dealing with this, of course the therapist is going to be able to help you through that. But he's handling it all wrong. I'm not going to spoil how, but he's not handling it well. But he's such a wreck that Alice is essentially being raised by his neighbor, Liz. And that's like, again, that's again, that multi-layered added character complexity that I appreciate. So, like I said, I already mentioned Jason Segel. I said if you like him, you're gonna like this show. He's great. Obviously, the other big actor, the big star of this show, right there on the poster, Harrison Ford. He plays another therapist named Paul at the same practice that Jimmy works at. There's also what's her name? Jennifer. I think I have it here. Hold on, just a moment. I don't want to do this woman wrong because she's great as well. Jessica, I'm sorry, I was going to say Jennifer Williams. Jessica Williams plays a therapist named Gabby. So that's the three that work in this, I guess, this one practice. It's Segel's Jimmy, Ford's Paul, and Williams is Gabby. But Harrison, I've never seen him in a role like this. I know he's done like little comedy roles every now and then, but I don't think he's done anything in like decades that we would consider comedy. But he's got like... So obviously, as he's gotten older, his voice has gotten a lot gruffer. He's got a lot more soft-spoken, though. But he's using that to great effect. Like that low-speaking, kind of like gruff voice of his. He's using it to great effect. Jason Segel's using Harrison Ford's voice to great effect. And he's funny every time you see him. And I'm like, man, this is wild that I'm watching something with Harrison Ford doing comedy, and it's really good. And it's like, of course, why would I doubt Harrison Ford, right? But I don't know, I've never seen him anything like this. And I think it's kind of cool to see him being funny when, I mean, this is a guy that I've been watching play Indiana Jones and Han Solo for the better part of the last 40 years. Like, it's like, okay, here he is doing something else. He's in Blade Runner. That's pretty much all the Harrison Ford shit I've seen is Indiana Jones, Blade Runner, and Han Solo. But like, he does his humor that he does here is very kind of like, it's very subtle, and I think it works because it's Harrison Ford. Like, I know that, and obviously he's not playing Harrison Ford in the show, but I think if you cast it, say like Rando Oldman or somebody who's just not with the gravitas of Harrison Ford, just somebody similar who is his age, and gave him the same lines, it wouldn't work as well. It's the fact that it's Harrison Ford that makes some of this shit work. Like Gabby asked me at some point, like, do you know what percentage of your body is water? And he goes, and again, mind you, low-spoken, gruff, and he goes like, no, but I can tell you what percentage of me doesn't give a shit. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why is Harrison Ford going in like this? But it's, I guess, really good. And then now, talking about that added character complexity, he also apparently has early onset Parkinson's, and I'm super curious / hopeful that they'll really swing for the fences with some big emotional moments with that. And then he also has there's something going on with his family where he doesn't talk about them. Like, he doesn't talk about his daughter. He won't let anyone else ask him about it. So, like, there's something going on there too. And that's shit that's gonna come out and later in this season, I'm sure that shit is gonna come out in therapy when they're all talking to one another or something like that. And I'm sure it's gonna work. I'm sure it's gonna be great. And I think that's what's gonna make this show stand out from your other kind of like typical comedies that you see on television today. Another example of this. So I in my notes, I kind of like started talking about the added layer of complexity to the characters at this point in my notes, but I've already been talking about that, so I gotta like skip over that. But Liz is another example of this. Like I said, Liz has, for all intents and purposes, been raising Jimmy's daughter while he's been doing what he's been doing on the show, not being a very adequate father. But she's also dealing with an apparent empty nest syndrome as well. Like, all of her kids are grown up. She's now in the house alone with her husband. And so as Jimmy tries to repair his relationship with his daughter and try to, like, you know, be a decent father to her, this will also likely cause some heartache for Liz, who's undoubtedly gotten attached to his daughter, and having another kid around after all of her kids have left. Now she's got this kid in the house, and it's probably been nice for her. She's probably been, like, you know, needing that space in her heart filled, and now Jimmy, just trying to be a father to his own daughter, is gonna fuck that up for her. And I think that could, again, could be a really interesting plot point later in the season. And I like that the show is setting those sorts of things up. It's not all just comedy. They're doing serious character work, and they do the same thing on Ted Lasso. Jimmy has a strained relationship with his gay best friend as well, who I also think is a great character, his friend Brian. I don't think he's not introduced to the second episode, but he's great. That actor is great. So yeah, like that. I mean, that's really all this really boils down to. I don't know I don't really know if I plan on covering this or not. Like, on its face, I don't do comedy, right? Because I'm like, what am I gonna do? If this was funny, that was funny. But like, they're doing such good character stuff here, and I see the potential for like really interesting things to happen that I'd want to discuss, like how they built up to this. They laid a good foundation for this big pivotal moment, and now this moment really is really impactful. I'm sure everybody's crying watching it. That's because they did a good job setting it up. I'm sure it's gonna have shit like that, and that's probably gonna make me want to talk about it. But it also relies on how well this video does, how I feel about the next episode. Like, if I watch the next episode and I'm like, all I'm really gonna do is get in front of a camera and say, yo, that shit was funny, I'm not like, gonna waste my time. I already know it's gonna be funny. You know it's gonna be funny. I don't need to do that. But if they do some work with Liz's empty nest syndrome, with whatever went on between Brian, well, they touched on whatever happened with Brian and Jimmy in the second episode, and that was a really good scene. So like, adding some more into that, more stuff with Harrison and his family, more stuff with Jimmy and what he's dealing with his daughter. And then he also has a patient that he took from the Gabby character, who's like a Afghan war vet who's dealing with like PTSD, where he just like kind of like can snap on people for no reason. And you see, and Jimmy's whole thing is like, okay, I'm gonna do, what do you call it, psychological vigilante. He's like gonna do, like, he's stepping outside the box for his therapy. And I'm wondering too, what's gonna happen with this character, this I think his name's Sean, the PTSD character, because he's gotten really interesting. And I looked at IMDb, he's in all the episodes. I thought he was gonna be like therapy patient of the week, and there's gonna be like a new person every week, but it looks like this guy's gonna be around, and that makes me even more curious, like, how is this relationship gonna evolve between him and Jimmy? So really interesting stuff going on. And like I said, I'm interested in that stuff alone, Never mind the fact the show is funny as fuck. Like, this is a really funny show. So, yeah, real big thumbs up for me on this one. I don't know if by the time we get to the end of 2023, if I'm going to look at this as the same way I looked at Ted Lasso, like a top 10 show of the year. But right now, it's looking like a potential another Ted Lasso. So really looking forward to see what they do here. Oh, one more other interesting character note. Liz's husband is played by Ted McGinley, who I didn't recognize, and you may not recognize by the name, because I don't know, I haven't seen him in like, I don't know, however many decades it's been since he was goddamn Jefferson on Married with Children. That fucking guy. He plays Liz's husband on this. So that was cool seeing him. I'm watching, I'm like, man, this dude look familiar. And then the credits go, and I'm like, was that fucking Jefferson from Married with Children? And he gets like 3 scenes in the 2 episodes, and all 3 are hilarious. He's like super fucking sarcastic to the point where it's like you can't even tell. Like, if it wasn't for what he was actually saying, you wouldn't even know he was being sarcastic, because you're like, there's no way he could be happy about this. But it's like him being sarcastic about all the shitty things that Jimmy has kind of brought into his life. And he's like super sarcastic about how much he enjoys them. It's hilarious. So yeah, big thumbs up on this one, man. Really enjoyed it. Looking forward to checking this out. I'll definitely be watching the whole thing. Like I said, coverage is going to depend on how this video does in between now and Friday. If it does poorly, I won't cover it. If it does decent and I watch episode 3 and I think there's some shit that I want to talk about other than that was funny, then you guys will see me next Friday to talk about episode 3. So until then, peace.